lovelies, and welcome back to Crazy But Not Dangerous. I'm Shorty Vaughn, and today I was digging around in my freezer, and I got to the very bottom, and I found these. These are chicken breasts. They are extremely frosty, and I know that they're about 6 months old, so they haven't been in there long enough for me to be concerned about them, but they're a little frostier than I would like to enjoy them. So what I'm going to do is not waste them, but I'm going to go ahead and make some chicken broth. There's a lot of controversy and a lot of discussion about what's the difference between a broth and a stock, bone broth, bullion, consommé, and we'll go ahead and talk about all these things too. Yay, hooray! So let's go ahead and make our broth. Okay, here I've got my trusty, handy-dandy crock pot, and whether I'm making broth or whether I'm making stock, this is my favorite appliance to make it in. What is the difference between broth and stock? So typically a stock is made using both the flesh of the meat and the bones, and your bones may be roasted first, maybe not. It's completely optional. Broth is typically used just with the flesh of the meat, no bones included. Both of the stock and the broth include aromatics, and I save my veg scrap as I'm doing my prep work or doing whatever, and then I put it in this bag, and it is a recycled tortilla bag. And I keep this in my freezer, and basically it's got everything in here but the kitchen sink. So I'm going to go ahead and just dump that in here, and it is quite a lot. It's got onions, it's got carrots, it's got celery, it's got a little bit of bell pepper and broccoli, and it's a bit. It's quite a bit. To that, I'm going to go ahead and add my extremely freezer burnt chicken. Like I said, this is about 6 months old, but it got pushed all the way down to the bottom. I'm not so much worried about the safety of it, but the quality of it might be a little bit less than desirable for grilling or what have you. The other option to do with my extremely freezer burnt chicken would be to cook it with a great liquid, like a broth, like a gravy, like something tomatoey or what have you, that's going to cover up that freezer burnt taste. But I needed a little broth, and so we'll go ahead and do that. So we've got our vegetables in there, we've got our chicken in there. I've added a couple of sprigs of rosemary, fresh from my garden. Don't they look great? Yay, hooray. And I've added about 8 cups of water to this. Also, for me, the other difference between a stock and a broth is the fact that with the broth, I will go ahead and add salt to this one. Whereas with my stocks, I simply do not. I will label my jar, this broth with salt. To remind myself that when I'm using that broth in a dish, that I don't add any more salt without tasting first, so that I don't over salt my dish. So to this 8 cups of water, I am going to add 1 tablespoon of kosher salt. And I would still consider 1 tablespoon of kosher salt to 8 cups of water to be a low sodium dish. And it's just as easy as that. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on low, and I am going to let that go for about the next 8 hours. Whereas if I was doing a stock, I would actually let that go all the way overnight for maybe as long as 24 to 36 hours, making sure that I am leaching out all of the great gelatin and collagen and nutritious value of those bones into my stock. What's the difference between a stock and a bone broth? Well, this is a great question. Honestly, there's no difference. The stock is a bone broth. Both of them will have collagen. Both of them will have gelatin. They will have a very intense, rich flavor from that meat, from those bones. Both very good for you. Both have an intense umami to them that will lend itself to your dish. Both of them will also have a great luxurious mouthfeel to them. So when I'm taking my rotisserie chicken carcass that I got over at Smart and Final for $3.99, and I've taken the majority of the meat off of it, and then I'm putting that into my crock pot with the water and the aromatic vegetables, I'm creating a stock, also otherwise known as a bone broth. So really no difference between a stock and a bone broth. And really the only difference between a stock and a broth is the fact that the broth has no bones added. It's all flesh, all meat. Then we could talk about a consommé. So a consommé would be a broth or a stock that has been clarified. That means that you filtered it at least 2 or 3 times to make sure that you're removing fats, impurities, little bits of whatever, and it will be very clear, and it will be a concentrated taste, but not as powerfully tasting as a broth. And that's really the only difference, is how many times you run it through, basically I run it through a coffee filter. I find that we don't use very many applications for a consommé because we're just not that fancy. But I use the chicken stock or the chicken broth all the time. Chicken broth is great for boiling your pasta, making your rice, making a very quick soup that you want to taste like it cooked all day. Broth and stock can be used interchangeably in almost every recipe, so it really doesn't matter. You got bones, you don't got bones. Got some water, got some aromatics, got some salt. You're in like Flynn. No sweat. What's the difference between stock, broth, and bullion? So bullion is all the rage. And whether you're using the little dollar store cubes, whether you've got better than bullion in your refrigerator, if you have the Knorr powder, basically it is basically dehydrated broth because it's salted. It was made with aromatics. It may have some fats included, so it's not a consommé. But basically it is your broth dehydrated. And you could certainly even do that yourself. We could take this after the next 8 hours and we could go ahead and pour it into the flats with the curved edges of my dehydrator, and we could go ahead and dehydrate that. For me, that's just one more step. I've got plenty of room for some chicken broth in my freezer, or you could certainly can it if you had a pressure canner. But yes, so that is basically the difference between stock, broth, bullion, bone broth, consommé. There you go. No big deal. It's all basically whatever. And you would use this exact same process for doing beef, or if you wanted to do a seafood broth, like maybe you wanted a really great seafood base for some bouillabaisse, or whatever other seafood stew, clam chowder. You could certainly do a clam broth and serve that as the base of your clam chowder. You can refrigerate that. You could can that. All of those things. It's delicious. It's something nice to have on hand. I refrigerate mine. I slowly microwave it to bring it to temperature to use. But that is pretty much all there is to it. And now I'll just set this back to the edge of my countertop here so I have plenty of room to get my dinner on for tonight. But quick and easy. And that way you have reduced waste. You've reduced waste because we did not throw away those freezer burnt chicken parts. And then we did get our veg on from our scrap. And it will impart all of those flavors. I won't reuse either one of these bags. One, because it had chicken in it, and that's potentially harmful. I've heard that you can wash them thoroughly and that they will be fine. For me, I'm just not going to take the chance because this bag is like 10 cents and a trip to the emergency room is like $1,200. So the math makes sense to me. I will let this go for 8 hours. And then what I will do is, basically I will take my little strainer and put it over here. And then I will just strain off all of that veg, all of the chicken into the strainer, discard that, and then I will have the broth down below. If it looked cloudy, if it didn't look... He's in a mood. He's in a mood. Who knows? If it looked cloudy, if it had little bits still, I might run it through the strainer again. If I wanted to clarify it even more to make it into the consommé, I would put a coffee filter into that strainer and then run it through the coffee filter 2 or 3 more times to have a very clear liquid. And that coffee filter should be able to capture all of the impurities and fat and come through very clean and clear. Like I said, we're not that fussy. And, I just basically want all of the veg and the chicken not in my broth. And that's about as far as I take it. Then I will take mason jars and I will fill them, leaving them about 1.5 inches of headspace. Put the lids on, label them, and then go ahead and put them into my freezer to freeze solid. And that's just about it. That's just about it. It's easy peasy and a great way to save some freezer burnt 6-month-old chicken from the bottom of my freezer. I like it. We're not wasting. It's always good. All right, tonight we're going to have ribeye steak, twice baked potato, and broccoli with cheese sauce. Nothing low-cal or healthy about that, but it's what the man asked for. It's what Andrew wanted. I'm just here for him. I'm just here for him. All right, my lovelies, be good, be careful, look both ways. Make yourself some delicious broth or stock or consommé or dehydrate yourself some bullion. Have at it. Enjoy. Thanks for watching Crazy But Not Dangerous. See you next time.